And we're going to continue with tape number 3. Before I get it started, because I like to read it the way it is in the book, you got to picture me sitting in a room in a place called the Guinea Fowl Inn. Not one other traveler in the place but me. And the bar closes at 9 o'clock. So there's absolutely zero to do but go back to your room or get eaten alive by mosquitoes. So I'm in the room under a mosquito net with my recorder telling these stories about what I remember about going to Africa. That's the context in which these tapes are made. Okay? So now I'm going to do it as in the form of a short story. Tape number 3. Yes, Delaware, there is a Seco Signana. While I was in America, I worked as a public defender for 6 years. I was assigned to the anger capital of the entire universe, affectionately known by my coworkers and judges as the family circus of the state of Delaware. Friday, December 31st, 1993, was my last official work day. I retired from practice of law. I quit. The following Monday, I flew to Africa. I was awakened at dawn while we were in the airplane by Tony, another brand new World Teach volunteer, who elbowed me and said, "Hey Tommy, there goes Nelson Mandela." And I said, "Sure." "No kidding, there he is," pointing. Holy Moses, there was the man himself, shaking hands and smiling at every passenger, working down the aisle and working the crowd better than Bill Clinton or JFK. He glanced at me as he went by, and he touched my hand quickly and he winked. The following morning at dawn, I felt a touch on my shoulder. His personal aide summoned me to the front cabin. As an experienced politician myself, I knew not to interfere with the politically motivated handshaking the day before as he was moving up and down the aisles with personal conversation, and I didn't bother him, and I knew he appreciated that as he passed me by. That's probably the reason he tapped me. However, the aide had elbowed Mandela, who winked at me. They wanted to know why this old man, this Dr. Tommy, a well-known lawyer and judo master, was a volunteer. I explained to Nelson Mandela that it had nothing to do with politics or government. It had to do with me starting over in life. And he made me feel very special when he said, "Dr. Tommy, thank you for your struggle. We need you here in Africa. Say hello to my friend Sam for me when you get to Namibia," referring to President Sam Nujoma of the Republic of Namibia. What a spiritual signal. I knew I was in the flow. The trip went uphill from there. We were met when we landed by Namibian World Teach officials at the Windhoek airport. They met us and greeted us and helped us unload our bags. We took a long bus ride to Ams, where we were issued our keys, picked our roommates, and found our rooms. Then they gave us our marching orders for the next 30 days of intensive training. 0630, wake up by a rooster at my window. Every morning, same rooster. 0700, chow call, very strange looking stuff. 0900, call to class. Noon, lunch, more very strange stuff. 2 p.m., back to class. 6 p.m., supper, thank God, hamburgers, something I recognized. 0730, back to class or a speaker that we could never understand. All of this was designed to increase our confidence as strangers in a new, foreign, third world environment. I hated it. So did everyone else. I felt like I was still a recruit in Marine boot camp. The only bright side was my roommate Jimmy, a 22-year-old free spirit from Chicago. He had every gadget he could pack from the Smart Campers catalog, including the best late-night listening music I ever heard. He made our monks' quarters comfortable. Good thing, too, because we spent most of our time there. It rained like hell for the first 6 days. Over here in Africa, it's called the Good Range, and everyone seems quite happy about it. Exactly one exhaustively soggy week later, we boarded a crowded bus for a very warm and sticky 8-hour ride north to the Angolan border. At each checkpoint along the way, the expressions, both inside and outside our vehicle, became much more tense. Official-looking grouchy uniformed military with AK-47s requested to see all papers, and Mother Superior handed them over while looks were exchanged stoically and smiles disappeared. At the border, we took a hard right and traveled over a very bumpy road next to a barbed wire fence toward St. Mary's Mission in Odibo, Namibia. This was to be our brand new home for an entire week of practice teaching. Before disembarking from the bus, we were instructed, "Don't go off the paths. You might step on a landmine." Nice welcome, huh? Our building was much like a United States Marine barracks, including cold showers, bunk beds, and mosquito nets. Ouch! Mosquitoes. They were continually bombarding us, and we were briefed, "Take the prophylactic drugs or die." My fear of these little tiny creatures was becoming overpowering. Back in America, I had decided earlier on, after intimate discussions with my lifelong personal physician and an extensive physical exam, not to take any anti-malarial drugs at all. My reasoning was simple. I'm very healthy, and there are people already living here that don't take anti-malarials. I thought there must be some kind of natural immunity, and I would try to tap into it. My attitude was, I'll get malaria once and dysentery twice anyway, so let's get the hell over with as soon as possible. At Odibo, I befriended a 19-year-old white man from Cape Town, South Africa, named Andrew. We had a lot in common, including our long ponytails and a taste for looking at the beautiful night sky while talking constantly about personal philosophies of life. Frankly, he was a very spiritual dude, and I liked that. He taught me the constellation of stars common to this half of the world. In spite of our age span, it was uncanny how we related. The second night during our official compulsory and obligatory official politically correct nightly World Teach Medical Skeeter Scare Show, I glanced at him, I winked and I smiled. He winked and smiled back. We both knew at that very instant neither of us were taking the damn pills. Afterward, during our walk, I said, "Seriously, Andrew, what do you want to do?" We burst out laughing. We grinned at each other and simultaneously stripped off our shirts and walked and talked for several hours, looking up at the night sky. Not one bite on either of us. The next night, I took off my skeeter net and slept. Not one bite. I didn't get a bite the whole week. However, I did finally put my mosquito net back on. I wasn't going to be reckless. And you must take responsible precautions with these miserable little pests. Everything in Africa moves on legs or wings. The ground moves. The sky moves. The air moves. And things constantly go bump on your exposed body parts. At first, it's truly exasperating and very scary. And then slowly some personal accommodation is reached with these critters. They are tolerated, then ignored. If one doesn't reach this accommodation, one moves on from Africa. Odibo has its fair share of movers and shakers. We met the villagers. We were invited into their huts. We were invited to drink homebrew, assured of course that it contained no alcohol. I knew better, but I sipped it once just to be polite. The first evening after chow call, our group headed en masse for the Odibo Shopping Center. It consisted of two buildings surrounded by a stick fence called a corral. One was a bar, and the other had a pool table and chairs outside used by patrons to sit in, and the rest sat in the sand near the fire around the bar. It looks exactly like Dewey Beach in Delaware must have looked like back in the good old days. Everyone chatting and talking about under the stars about the extreme stress of teaching people who can't understand one damn word you say. It went like this, each telling their own version of the same story. What's your name? I would point at a student. My name is Tommy. I'd point back at me. Huh? He said, louder. My name is Tommy, pointing and screaming louder and louder. They just stared. Even my Chevy Chase routine wouldn't make them laugh. I pretended to fall down. They didn't laugh. They just stared at me politely, almost embarrassed for me. It turned out that all the volunteers had the same experience. So we partied all night, talked about our first frustrating day teaching English. The next day in class, under a tree, they were still too shy to talk, so I tricked them. I noticed a local language brochure with a symbol of justice on it. So I introduced the idea of a trial. I was told at Ike Adams that they knew some English. So with grunts and signs and body language, I picked a criminal out of the class, the biggest and strongest looking. The girls all giggled when I called him a criminal in English. I picked his pocket and then instructed him in English to pretend to pick my pocket. I appointed policemen in English who arrested him. I appointed a judge and a jury, and we tried him with each student playing a specific role in English. I introduced the idea of a jury. They spoke English all day long and they absolutely loved it. After dinner, he got off with a verdict of not guilty. It was great. They applauded and cheered, and now I had a gimmick. I'll teach law and English and keep them in line with judo. I fell in love with Adibo on the day I arrived. A very old man with white fluff on his head and on his face gave me a beautiful smile as he approached me with his arms up, crying big tears, and said, "Welcome, Father." Everybody over there called me Father. I can never figure that out. I cried, others cried. He and I held hands and walked for over an hour in silence, just little gentle hand squeezes between two old men. I was totally embarrassed. I had never held a man's hand before that I can remember, except for my father. It was a wonderful experience. I also fell in love with my fellow volunteers at Adibo. I coined a name for them, Teachers of Fortune. I saw them deal with their loneliness, the bugs, the frustration at acting cool and politically correct in a strange environment. They clung to each other for friendship. Great friendships developed. I befriended Scott and Roger. We played chess all the time. They watched me struggle at the subtle age discrimination. They knew others resented me for my obvious extensive life experience. We talked all night, sitting on a log under the stars at Adibo. Yes, I fell in love with Adibo.